Hello and welcome, I'm Vince64 and you've caught me at a great time. Not too long ago I had a chance to meet some new friends. They're not too talkative, but I think I'm fitting in quite well. So, this is Dragon Quest Builders, well, the demo of Dragon Quest Builders. After hearing about this game way back when it was first announced and seeing that Square Enix had finally released an English demo, I was eager to dive into it. I've always been a fan of these creative, build-your-own-stuff kind of games, and as most gamers, I've also messed around with Minecraft. So, merging the creative blockiness of Minecraft with the styling of Dragon Quest, count me in! This demo was a really fun and adventurous experience that's already got me hyped up and ready to go with the full game. It's also surprisingly long for a demo version, much longer than I had initially anticipated. But, besides all of that, this was a story about a young builder named Vince rising from his grave to explore the world beyond his centuries-old tomb and discovering so many new things. Like this ruined town, which I immediately claimed for myself by sticking this flagpole into the center. Engulfed by a shimmering light, the surrounding area suddenly became free of the darkness that had shrouded the rest of the land. And lo and behold, another person was quick to arrive to bask in the soothing light of my new settlement. Her name was Pippa. She was taken aback with my abilities as a builder and hastily requested to start our life anew, together. Of course, Pippa had many requests, for in order to build ourselves a safe and prosperous home, I needed to fix the nearby house. Immediately being super impressed with my patch-up work on the ruined old house, which I had fixed up with a few blocks of dirt, Pippa was ecstatic, clapping her hands in joy and wonder. She was a bit weirded out by the fact I was hearing the godly voice of the Dragon Quest Builders goddess, but it didn't really prove to be a problem. Of course, her next request was a rightly one as well. I needed to build a light source in our new house. The goddess, her blessings were truly upon us, as this divine power granted me the materials to build a torch. After showing her my fire, and nearly burning her face off with it, she was dumbfounded by the fact that I had built it. Yes indeed, fair Pippa, I have discovered fire. Wanting to know the name of the genius that stood before her, she wasn't as impressed with my name as she was with my discovery of fire, but being as good-hearted as she was, Pippa quickly consoled me by saying you can't judge someone by their name. Right? When I cleaned up the house of weeds and other such filth, and placing the fire that I had expertly crafted for her inside, she found it hard to believe that someone who looked so dopey could be so talented. But you can't judge someone by their appearance, right? Her next request was another simple one. Sleeping on the dirt was no way for a lady such as a fair Pippa to rest her eyes, even being so bold and straightforward as saying we require 2 beds, so that we may spend the night together, in comfort, next to one another. Taken aback and overjoyed with this sudden confession of true love, I hurried to build 2 beds. But I needed some more grassy leaves. Upon weeding out most of the weeds in our new home and breaking a few rocks here and there, I had acquired all the materials I needed. Creating my first bedroom for Pippa and I seemed somewhat fitting as the first real house of our new town. Next up was yet another simple and logical step in solidifying life together, here in our new home. Fair Lady Pippa requested I provided us with some nourishment. Nearby plumberry trees grew an abundant stash of delicious plumberries that were really sweet and juicy. I also found some mushrooms that were sure to satiate our appetite in the coming days. On my way back, I discovered a strange herd of blue creatures. The friendly smile on their dopey faces and the way they moved about seemed almost familiar, somehow. Knowing I still had the responsibility of providing food to my fair Pippa, I could not spend too much time with my blue and slimy friends. Gifting Pippa the delicious plumberries, she was kind enough to give me my share. Desiring a way to store our belongings in, I quickly came up with something I called a chest. Once more, Pippa was taken aback by my creative talent. Realizing that the dangers of the outside world could harm our peaceful life together, I placed some dirt blocks around the perimeter of our new-founded town. With progress being made so rapidly, Pippa desired a room of her own in which she could start building things herself. Clearing out some empty space in the town and gathering a whole lot of dirt blocks from the surrounding area, even to the point where my bashing stick was no longer able to serve its purpose, since it broke, I started punching the dirt and more dirt block punching, all fueled by the desire to improve our lives together. Dusk soon fell, and before I knew it, it was nighttime. The fair and beautiful Pippa was already sound asleep in the bedroom that I had made for us. I laid down my weary body next to her, and I shall never forget that first night we spent together. The next day I made quick work of building the workroom for Pippa, for which in turn she was once again overjoyed. Her next request seemed kind of off at first, saying it wouldn't be much of a city with just the 2 of us living there. Was her love waning? Or simply the next logical step in establishing our foothold in this world? After all, what she said was true. We needed more people to truly raise a community. Revealing to me she spotted a suspicious-looking man lurking around nearby. He looked like a bit of a weirdo, so she took the best possible action and avoided him. Still, we could use someone to add to our workforce. I needed to find this strange-looking weirdo, so I prepared for the journey and headed out to find him. After I first did some more landscaping and spent another glorious night under the moonlit sky with a fair and beautiful Pippa. Thus, the next morning, I headed into the wilderness. I quickly stumbled upon an abandoned house that I expertly repaired. There was also a strange note with crude handwriting, which said something about some kind of ancient book. Not too far from this newfound outpost, I discovered a strange heap of dirt that, to my great surprise, had someone buried underneath. After removing the dirt, I received thanks from the man that was trapped inside. He was quite curious to know who I was, as he made fun of my face. He and his bushy beard could hardly believe when I told him about the city that I was rebuilding. The bearded man was quite interested in joining, but after he saw my hesitation, after all, he seemed much stranger than I ever was, he told me he'd find his way to my community whether I liked it or not. His name was Rollo, the apparently proud owner of the most venerable of books, the Cantlin Chronicle. Saying he would be of invaluable use, he followed me back to my city. Once there, he was taken aback by what Pippa and I had already managed to build, and the fair Pippa seemed very happy with the new friend that I had rescued. I did tell her he looked a bit shady to me. When she first saw him, he was giggling to himself and stroking an enormous book, which only strengthened my beliefs that I should keep an eye on this Rollo character. Still, being the fair and gracious lady she was, Pippa spoke truthful, stating that he must be pretty dependable and clever. After all, he did have a big and bushy beard. Upon having talks with his Rollo character, he revealed to me that our settlement was written of in this Cantlin Chronicle of his. I didn't hesitate to further inquire about this chronicle, as he went on and on about the thing. He claimed it to be of invaluable importance, and that it contained ancient knowledge passed down in his family over countless generations. He had taken it upon himself to deciphering the tome. True, it would no doubt be beneficial in rebuilding the city and improving the lives of Pippa and myself, but I remained wary of his actions. He questioned the fact that I was a legendary builder spoken of in his book, and in order to prove myself to him, he requested that I show him a legendary item spoken of in his book. I didn't really prioritize his request, but rather decided to fill in some holes in our city and build a small room for him and his bushy beard. As dusk fell, I headed back into the wilderness to procure the materials I needed to build Rollo this legendary item. Feathers of the monsters called chimeras that prowl the southwest of our city. Once I obtained a chimera feather, I immediately realized how to build a chimera wing, an item that would transport me instantly to my base. Deciding to fell a few more, night soon fell. When I arrived back home, to my utter horror, I discovered a fair Pippa and this bushy bearded Rollo character sleeping side by side. I am still unsure if it was the graceful smile of the fair Pippa that withheld me from murdering Rollo at that moment, or if I simply could not muster to slay this man in cold blood. Upon waking Rollo, he simply asked about the chimera feathers he had me procure, without even a hint of shame or remorse for that matter. I worked long into the night, crafting these chimera wings to prove once and for all that I was a legendary builder of legend spoken of in the Cantlin Chronicle, and that I alone had the skills and right to court the young and fair Lady Pippa. Upon the morning, I approached Pippa, who just thanked me for finding new friends to come and live in our city, and, to my great relief, requested that I should build more bedrooms and beds for everyone to sleep on. She must not have known that I built the bearded bastard a bedroom of his own the day before, or for that matter that he had spent the night beside her. This realization fueled my rage and utter disgust for Rollo. I watched as a pure-hearted Pippa was working hard to build us some sticks. But they were the fairest and most beautiful sticks of them all. I approached Rollo to show him the magnitude of my building powers, the chimera wing. Upon seeing my magnificence, he was immediately convinced I was a legendary builder of legend. He did see the need to once again hold his book as leverage, and indeed, the tome did seem useful. But I had not forgotten what happened the night before, and when he just laughed in my face, something inside of me snapped. I kept battering him with my club, swinging it with all of my might, but it was to no avail. Maybe it was the goddess's power that protected me from committing a horrible act, or maybe Rollo's bushy beard protected him from my rampaging assault. It mattered not, I needed time to figure things out. Once I had regained my senses, I continued fortifying our town walls. The Lady Pippa had another graceful request for me, to provide a kitchen in which we could make some hearty meals. After all, we couldn't keep on living off of plumberries. And after procuring some more dirt for our wall and the necessary materials for a cooking fire, I built a kitchen. Being as modest as she was beautiful, the fair Pippa told me she finally had a place to cook some scrummy food. I continued to build more accommodations for any possible new arrivals to our town. And as dusk came, and also night fell upon us, I went to our bedroom and waited for the fair Pippa. She quickly took to bed, and even as I knew that bearded bastard Rollo was walking towards our bedroom, I quickly lay down beside her to prevent any further atrocities to the graceful and fair Pippa from happening. I was engulfed by a great sense of joy and comfort, and I knew that from that moment on, Rollo would no longer question my authority as a leader of this community. He did ask me to cook him something, which I naturally objected. He got offended and said I build a whole kitchen for Pippa but wouldn't make him a single measly meal. Well, yeah, I did set out to do as he asked, to further solidify my superiority, so I cooked some of the best rooms on a stick that had ever been cooked up. Recognizing my superior skills in almost everything, Rollo was simply taken aback by the meal I had made for him. As he feasted on the extremely tasteful shrooms on a stick, I knew this was my chance to demand to see this cantling chronicle of his with my own two eyes. Sly and clever as he was, what with that bushy beard of his, Rollo kept the book to himself. I did manage to clearly state that the book was the only thing that kept him in our community, and that if he was unable to decipher more of the writings within the tome, that I'd throw him back in the dirt pile from whence he came. Having finished the fortifying wall outside our town, I approached Rollo to see if he had made any progress. He was clever enough to stall his time, so I decided to build something that could both serve as a storage holder and provide our modest community with the necessary decoration: a pot. The next morning, Rollo had dire news. The monsters had surmised a plan to attack our settlement. Luckily, I had finished the fortifications the day before, but this was still grave news that could endanger my peace of life with Pippa. I didn't really care about Rollo. After all, if the monster did manage to kill him, I would wrinkle that tome from his corpse. But what Rollo said next really shocked me. He would join in the fight and saw it as his duty to protect my dearest Pippa and our beloved home. Might be a backstabbing, bushy-bearded weirdo, but even Rollo was not without redemption, so it seemed. As the battle begun, I did not hesitate to jump over the western wall and fight the monsters head-on. One fell by my club. Then another, and as Rollo just cowered behind the safety of the wall and pretended to have slain one of the skeletons, the third quickly fell too, as did the fourth, until just one remained. Which Rollo saw his opportunity to claim he had partaken in the battle himself. His help was of no real use. I could have easily slain 100 of these skeletons by myself. After the battle, the goddess contacted me. It had been a while since she last had spoken to me. She gifted me with a blue tablet fragment. A new person had found his way to our town. He was quite selfish in his attitude, so I did not really care much for him. Pippa did tell me he had a funny little hat, to which she obviously meant that mine wasn't a funny little hat, but a magnificent blue headpiece worn only by great heroes of old. Rollo had deciphered more of his tome. The blue tablet fragment could apparently be used in the creation of something called a teleportal, that had the ability to transport me somewhere my wildest dreams could come true. If that indeed meant that I could craft a tool that would slay Rollo for his past indiscretions and marry the fair Pippa, then it would be so. I laid down the teleportal on an altar which I crafted from dirt. Everybody seemed to be really impressed. Pippa even said, "That's incredible!" Perhaps I was not worthy of such praise from the fair and beautiful Lady Pippa, but I digress. Then Rollo said something about speaking to him before even attempting to cross the teleportal, which I did, and he blabbered on about some kind of hammer. That night I procured more dirt and once again went to bed with the gracious Pippa. I did have a funny dream that night, something about the words of the king. It wasn't really all that important. As I awoke, I tried out the teleportal and it didn't work. But then I remembered my blue, bouncy friends outside the town. I erected a monument in their honor. I also discovered a tiny cave that held a chest inside. I rid the cave of some foul cretins and claimed the chest's contents. Deciding to head out into the wilderness once more, I arrived at a signpost that read something about a destroyed bridge and mankind having lost the ability to build bridges. Of course, I immediately set out to rebuild this bridge. A dirt bridge. Being repelled by a strange force, I quickly gave up and started building a tower staircase instead. Higher and higher and higher, until I was once again repelled by a strange force. Another night I wandered a swampy area, where I was assaulted by a ghost and some evil-looking trees. One of the trees even managed to harm me so much that my clothes fell apart. But not bothered by my sudden nakedness, I ventured onward. Then I grew somewhat cold and used one of those chimera wing thingies. I put on some new clothes, which looked exactly like my old ones, and climbed the tower, which had a chest. And ultimately, as the pinnacle of my adventures in the wild, I discovered a sleeping dragon. I was quick to build myself a dirt house next to it, knowing that felling such a foe would prove troublesome with my current equipment. Using all of my wit and knowledge, I dug a trench towards the dragon, surmising that it would be unable to hit me with any of its attacks while I lunged my club at it to deal a powerful blow of 0 and 1 damage, sometimes more. But the dragon was smarter than I had anticipated, and it dug itself into the trench along with me. When I saw it do its spin attack, I realized the severity of my actions. This might have been a bit too much for even a legendary builder of legend. Each time it sank itself deeper into my trench. I dug a trench deeper and deeper. But it kept lowering itself in order to assault me. So if I couldn't beat it, I'd simply build a layer of dirt over it. That plan seemed to work until I carelessly fell into the dragon's pit and died. But by the grace of the goddess, I was resurrected at the town, and I wasted no time in hurrying back to the dragon's pit. To my surprise, the dragon had now moved itself on top of what was supposed to be the layer of dirt that would cover it. I needed to find a way to get the dragon to fall down into the pit below. Nothing really seemed to work, so I just decided to pick up as much of the dirt below as I could. When it finally did lower itself into the pit, I hurried to safety but died before I could. When I came back to the dragon's pit for my dirt and what would surely be my final attempt at trapping the dragon in a dirt prison, the dragon was still inside the pit, trapped like a little wyvern baby. It took some time and a whole lot of daring, but I managed to trap the dragon underneath a layer of dirt. The world was now safe. And I built a dirt tower on top of it just to see if I could glitch the dragon to appear at the top of it. It did not. And that concludes my very personal story with the demo of Dragon Quest Builders. I've seen quite a lot of other YouTubers and reviewers describing this game as Minecraft, but with a purpose. And that truly seems to be the best comparison between the two. You can just build stuff in the free build mode, only in the full game, but the story mode that is separated in 4 chapters gives you a true feeling of purpose while building all of these things. You're doing much more than just messing around. You're providing homes and other accommodations to these people, all the while venturing forth in an unknown yet not randomly generated world to discover the secret behind what happened in this world. It's also a really nice touch from the developers to base this all around the very first ever Dragon Quest game. So you're basically rebuilding the world in Dragon Quest 1 block by block. I look forward to spending more time with the full version of this game, but probably sometime in the future. Because my current library of active games I play is already way too large for my comfort, and I tend to really make the most of the games I buy and play, and really take my time to soak in the amazing worlds that they've built. I'm Vince64, and this was Dragon Quest Builders, a love story between the legendary builder of legend, called Vince, and the fair and beautiful Lady Pippa. Best waifu. Also, I can't be the only one that played this game that thinks the main character looks like a slime with a top-down camera, huh?